Okay, so you will be beginning Blogamania 2 for comparison and contrast. And some of the objectives that we have for comparison and contrast are that you are to review and to understand comparison contrast paragraphs, to review and to understand the development of comparison and contrast paragraphs, to review and to understand the method for writing comparison contrast paragraphs, to review and to understand the revision process for comparison and contrast paragraphs, to review and to understand the two methods of development for comparison and contrast paragraphs. You have models in Chapter 12, Comparison and Contrast, pages 259 to 277. If you're in a different textbook or a different edition of the textbook, then those pages may be different, but you can always look at the table of contents and find the comparison and contrast chapter and review those page numbers instead. So for the assignment, once you have read chapter 12, you will click into Blogamania 2 and then follow the directions. So for Blogamania 2, you'll be looking at several different media. The first is I Love the Way You Lie video by Rihanna and Eminem. Then you will also look at burn victims photos that by clicking the link. You will also read the lyrics to I Love the Way You Lie by clicking the link. And then you will view a 7-minute portion of the Tracy Thurman story on YouTube. Now, for further objectives, you will view different media with similarities and differences that can be compared and contrasted. You will recognize the similarities and differences in different media that can be compared and contrasted. Then you will write about the similarities and differences in different media that can be compared and contrasted. You will read and view collaboratively and respond appropriately to peer student writings and opinions concerning the similarities and differences in different media being compared and contrasted. So, to begin, please view the video I Love the Way You Lie. Once you have viewed the video I Love the Way You Lie, then view the video from the Tracy Thurman story from 310 and the photos of the burn victims, and read the lyrics to I Love the Way You Lie. Then discuss whether or not the lyrics to the song and the images in the video from I Love the Way You Lie are accurate representations of the domestically abused and other burn victims in the photos and the victim of abuse in the movie The Tracy Thurman Story. In other words, do the images in the video and the lyrics look the same as the images in the photos and in the movie clip? Therefore, you should write a topic sentence addressing the prompt, and then you should write a sentence addressing one way in which the images and the lyrics are the same or are different. And then support your view with an example from the video, an example from the lyrics, an example from the photos, and an example from the movie. Then you will write another sentence addressing one way in which the images and the lyrics are the same or are different, and then support your view with an example from the video, an example from the lyrics, an example from the photos, and an example from the movie. Then you should write another sentence addressing one way in which the images and the lyrics are the same or are different, and then support your view with an example from the video, an example from the lyrics, an example from the photos, and an example from the movie. Following this process, the 3 times noted totals 60 points. In a final statement, tell your readers what your advice would be to both males and females concerning domestic violence. Last, read all responses and give a statement with an example from the peer's comment as to the reason that you agree or disagree with your peer student's comment. Remember, once again, that we can agree or disagree as long as we do so respectfully. And I look forward to reading your responses. Now below you will see that you have an outline. And this is what's called a topic sentence outline. Instead of writing subject by subject, which would mean that you would be writing about each of the works separately. So you might have a paragraph about I Love the Way You Lie, and then you would have a paragraph about the lyrics, then you would have a paragraph about the Tracy Thurman story, and then you would have a paragraph about the photos. Instead of writing this subject by subject, you'll be writing it by point, okay? And so that means that you will choose each of the 3 points that I've shown here, and you'll write a paragraph about each. So for your first example, you begin with your topic sentence. Your topic sentence should state all of the titles of all 4 works and the topics below being compared and the similarities and or differences. So that means that you would list all of the name titles of the works in that first sentence, and then you would have the words verbal abuse, physical abuse, and irreparable harm, because these are the points of comparison. So in your first comparison, you would be discussing verbal abuse. Okay, so you would have a sentence that talks about domestic abuse and how it involves verbal abuse. And then you would go to I Love the Way You Lie, the video, and you would write about and discuss an example in the video of where you see verbal abuse. Then you would do the same for the lyrics. You would then do the same for the Tracy Thurman story. Where in the Tracy Thurman story do you see someone verbally abusing another person? And then you would do the same thing for the example from the photos. Now, one of the things that happens with the photos is you won't actually see verbal abuse, but you will make the comment that verbal abuse most likely was present, since what we know is that most domestic abuse begins with verbal abuse. Okay, then you would do the same thing for physical abuse. Okay, you would give the second similarity or difference. Where in these 4 media do you see physical abuse? So you would write a sentence that says something about physical abuse is oftentimes present in domestic abuse. And then you would go to the I Love the Way You Lie video, and you would find an instance in which you see physical abuse, and you would write a sentence about it. Then you would do the same thing with the lyrics. You would read the lyrics, find a place where you hear the rappers talking about physical abuse, and then you would write what the rappers said about physical abuse. Is someone being physically abused in these lyrics? Then you would do the same thing in the movie clip for the Tracy Thurman story. Where do we see physical abuse? And you would write what you see concerning physical abuse. Then you would do the same thing for the burn victim photos. What does this physical abuse look like? Okay. Then you would give the third similarity or difference for irreparable harm or death to the victim. In I Love the Way You Lie, you would look at the video and see where you see instances in which there could be irreparable harm or death to this victim. You would do the same thing for the lyrics. Read the lyrics and see where you see an instance in which this person is saying that he or she is going to cause irreparable harm or death to this victim. Then you would do the same thing for the movie clip, the Tracy Thurman story. Do we see irreparable harm to Tracy in the Tracy Thurman story? And then you would do the same thing for the example from the photos, and then you would say what you see in writing. So that's how we would complete our details that we're giving, comparison and contrast details that we're giving for each of this media. Now, when you end this paragraph, you would repeat the topic sentence, giving the titles of all 4 works and the topics below being discussed with the similarities and or differences and relevance. And so you would basically, once again, repeat the topic sentence because it gives all of that information, and then show relevance for the reason that this topic is important. How do we save these victims? What should we do to help these victims in some way? So once you've completed the outline, it's a very detailed outline. Once you've completed this outline, you will compose your response from your outline so that you stay on topic by writing sentences for each item in the outline. And then, of course, once you do that, then you would add that to the blog, and then go into the blog. Once you have completed the blog, you will then read everyone's response and make a comment to one of the responses by detailing what it is that you agree with or disagree with, and then making that response. Okay, I look forward to reading your responses. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.